Until you start focusing on what needs to be done rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within the system are so impossible to find, maybe we should change the system itself. My prayer for us is that we do not burden our children and their children by our failure to act. We can't afford it, and they may not survive it. May our actions create a legacy our children will speak of as courageous, innovative, and determined action. And may we leave a legacy that is a thriving, livable planet for our children and theirs to the 7th generation.
As we're looking at this session, sort of outside of the items that were in the Senate Clean Energy Bill, looking at the public transportation front, we know that if we invest more in public transportation, we can get more cars off the road, we can reduce our carbon emissions. So what steps can we take to move towards improving our commuter rail system, our regional transit system, the MBTA in general? I think that's something that we can look at, and I would argue using carbon pricing to help invest in our public transit system and in clean energy in general. I think also a big lens which has been really, I've been very influenced by the talk about the Green New Deal at the national level is making sure to pay particular attention to equity issues and making sure that if we're passing clean energy policies that every single resident benefits from that. I am the Senate sponsor of one of the major environmental justice bills, and so I think we need to think about making sure that less well-off communities, including communities of color, benefit from the clean energy policies across Massachusetts. That's really, really critical. We all pay, for the most part, on our utility bill into various funds that fund energy efficiency programs, solar incentives, et cetera. Let's make sure that every single resident benefits from that. Massachusetts has been the leader on clean energy and energy efficiency policies now for over a decade, but we can't rest in our laurels. We need to keep advocating and keep fighting. Part of that educated workforce is solar, is wind, is making homes and businesses more energy efficient. So let's make sure that we are continuing to create thousands of clean energy jobs, including in Metro West, which is a really strong area for the whole state on the clean energy front.
Legislation that I filed would put together a commission to determine the process to change our building standards in the Commonwealth so that moving forward in a few years, we just build everything so that it only requires normal amounts of energy.
When I'm looking at this issue, I think about both the prevention methods, which is what a lot of what we're talking about thus far, whether it's increasing the amount of renewable energy, the amount of energy efficiency, all of that is going preventative / dealing with the fact that we have rising carbon. But then we also, at the same time, need to look at the mitigation of existing climate change and what we're doing as a Commonwealth in order to help the populations that are feeling these effects right now. A number of my colleagues live on the ocean, on rivers or on lakes, and they're seeing it immediately. But these are things that we also need to be dealing with, and I think a lot of it can be some very unsexy concepts like stormwater processes and making sure that we are dealing with stormwater in a sustainable fashion. For those of you who live in Framingham and every time it rains, you know not to drive between Route 9 and 126 because it floods. But that is part of the effects of climate change, as well as a little bit of the road dipping down, that we need to start to figure out, because we're going to see that more and more in places besides that particular intersection. So I think for me, as we continue to have this conversation, it is these broader concepts that we're trying to look at and making sure that we're we're trying to have a really bold vision, but at the same time, making sure that we're dealing with the immediate effects that we're seeing every day here at home.
Massachusetts, I believe, is a center of innovation and our economy, and we can take the lead, I believe, in the nation in this area and create some terrific green jobs in the process. And I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate, the House, the administration, all of you, to get something done, but just some ideas that, we need to look and focus on: more transit-oriented development, getting people out of cars and into public transportation. We need to have transportation that's accessible, affordable, reliable, and more comprehensive than it is now. We need to look at greening the grid, electrifying everything, switch completely from combustion-based energy to electric, keeping the focus on renewables. And as I mentioned earlier, battery storage. Massachusetts really has a lot of the research, the scientific know-how. If we can crack that area, we will get thousands and tens of thousands of jobs here in Massachusetts and be a leader, and also be able to enhance our green energy and our renewables. It will create thousands of jobs in the process. We need to look at food waste, curbside compost pickup, enforce existing food waste regulations for businesses, aggressive emissions reduction standards, and RGGI for transportation, the carbon tax, and use the funds to invest in non-carbon modes of transportation. Those are some ideas. I believe that there should be nothing that is off the table when we discuss and debate this. Thank you.